Drilling in English class seems like a simple and straightforward exercise, but have you ever done or seen someone do this? Grapes, grapes. I like grapes. Well, I have. I've seen many new and even experienced TEFL teachers do this in their classes many times, and they're making two key mistakes. Do you know what those are? Well, in this video, I'll be showing you 6 common mistakes that new TEFL teachers make when drilling vocabulary and phrases in their classes. And by the end of this video, you'll know the 2 mistakes that I just highlighted, as well as several more to avoid. So keep watching. There are lots of ways that you can easily make mistakes with your drilling. The first is by failing to establish the meaning of your target vocabulary or phrase. It's just not helpful for students to drill something that they don't understand. They're just making noises if there's no meaning attached to the sound and for them to remember. You can make this mistake by failing to show your realia, your flashcard, or however you're introducing the new vocabulary before drilling. One version of this that I see happens a lot in large classes with students to both sides of the teacher. The teacher starts by showing the flashcard to one side of the class and immediately begins drilling before the rest of the class can see the card. It looks something like this. Apple, 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 apple. This means that a big chunk of the class is missing out on a lot of meaningful drilling. So instead, take time to make sure that everyone can see your flashcard before you start drilling. Or position yourself so that everyone can see the card without you having to rotate. The second mistake that I often see is teachers drilling for way too long and boring their students. As a new teacher, this is really easy to do for several reasons. First, it's just easy to get into a comfortable rhythm and keep drilling for a long time. Second, a lot of new teachers get really focused on all of their students pronouncing everything perfectly, so they keep giving them a lot of opportunities. And third, basic drilling is just easy, and a lot of teachers feel like they're doing something that could be productive, so they keep drilling for a long time. In my observations, I've seen new teachers drill with their students for 5, even 10 minutes, really drilling the new vocabulary to death, way beyond what's interesting or useful for their students. What researchers say is that the usefulness of drilling drops off really quickly. This is because while students are drilling, they don't actually have to actively think that much about the information, and so it isn't stored into their long-term memory. You can tell that you've been drilling for far too long when your students' responses become robotic, or it just feels like you have to drag them through each repetition. Better is to just drill for a couple quick rounds and then move on to something else. You can always spot correct later on in the lesson. A third common mistake is drilling with unnatural pronunciation. The whole point of drilling, especially if you're a native English speaker working in a foreign country, is to provide an accurate and clear model for your students to imitate. Unfortunately, I see a lot of teachers breaking their pronunciation for their students, and often with good intentions. One of those is because the teacher wants to highlight some specific feature of the target vocabulary or phrase. For example, in Vietnam, where I work, the Vietnamese language doesn't have a final S sound, so many Vietnamese students drop it in the words, plural nouns, and second-person verbs that they use while they're speaking. Many teachers try to compensate for this by drilling items like books, or he likes apples. However, nobody actually speaks like that, and so that kind of pronunciation won't be reinforced throughout the rest of the lesson or outside of the classroom. And so that kind of drilling won't help students to retain the final S sound in the long term. Another reason is that new teachers often, unintentionally, start to pick up the local pronunciation quirks of their students. For example, I've seen a lot of new teachers drop their final S sound while they're speaking with Vietnamese students. I've seen this kind of thing in both Vietnamese and Korean classrooms. So make sure that you don't start imitating your own students and reinforcing their local pronunciation issues in your drilling. Finally, in the context of drilling, it's really easy to start stressing each of the syllables in a word or a phrase. For example, he likes to eat hamburgers. I've observed this kind of thing a lot, especially in large classes where you have many students trying to sync up their speech with the teacher, and the teacher tries to make it easier for them. So just be aware of this and watch out for when it happens. And if you need to, break your class into smaller groups and drill with them so that everyone can drill more naturally. The fourth and fifth common mistakes happen with individual drilling. First, it's good practice to start with whole class or choral drilling so that everyone in class gets plenty of opportunities to practice the pronunciation safely without the pressure of having to perform alone in front of all of their classmates. And then, once everyone's ready, switching to individual repetition so that you can spot check how some students are doing. However, you want to avoid the mistake of calling on a student before they're ready and potentially embarrassing them in front of all of their classmates. Now, there's no hard or fast rule of how to do this, but you really just want to stay aware of your class's energy, their body language, and their general performance so that you know when a student is ready. The fifth mistake is spending too much time in your lesson on individual drilling, especially at one time of the lesson. A lot of new teachers feel like each and every student in class has to have a chance to repeat each target word. But if you have 12, 20, or especially 45 students in a class, this is going to start to eat up a lot of time and momentum in the lesson. Instead, look to use individual drilling to spot check key targets, such as challenging words or phrases, and aim to get a meaningful sample size of your class. Also, it's a good idea to use pairs or small groups if you need to check many students quickly. Finally, it's also a good idea to use individual drilling to spot check later on in the lessons, just quickly. You don't have to keep all of your drilling just in one section of your lesson. Finally, the sixth mistake is a little counterintuitive, and that's focusing on getting perfection from your students and overcorrecting them. Of course, drilling is a very controlled, accuracy-focused activity. The whole point is to get your students to repeat the words clearly and accurately. However, we also have to remember that learning a foreign language is a long journey. For example, if you're working with preschool students, then many of them haven't even mastered correct pronunciation in their first language. So they're definitely not going to be able to always get it right in English. Pressuring those students, as I've seen some teachers do, to speak perfectly is going to leave those students confused and frustrated. These students, and older ones, might need a lot of time to train their ears to hear the sounds and for their tongues to make them. A 30-second drill or even 10 minutes of drilling in a single lesson isn't going to do that. Instead, if you hear students making a consistent error, then take note of it and then make a plan to implement a long-term fix, including using listening activities, songs, chants, and accuracy-focused games over multiple lessons, rather than continuing to hammer away with drills and corrections. So those are 6 common drilling mistakes that I see new TEFL teachers making. Were you able to figure out which ones I made in my intro? And what other common mistakes can you think of? Make sure to share your ideas and your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you're looking for ways to improve your classroom management skills, then check out my Udemy course on EFL Classroom Management. Just click the link in the description box below for a discount that I'm offering all viewers of my YouTube videos. Thanks again. See you soon.